up, you beautiful bastards? Hope you're having a fantastic Monday. Welcome back to the Philip DeFranco Show, and let's just jump into it. And the first thing we're going to talk about today are the stories that blew up over the weekend around YouTube demonetization and copyright claims. And we've seen an increase in the number of stories around this for two reasons. Super Mario Odyssey and the iPhone X. Around Super Mario Odyssey, a bunch of creators are being hit with copyright claims by Nintendo. A lot of people saying, why? What's happening? This is ridiculous. And my response is, yeah, and that's been the case since around 2015. And we've talked about this on the show. There have been cool things that Nintendo has put out there in the world I wanted to share in Today in Awesome. I will not feature it in this video because I'm scared that they're going to claim this video. I'm a huge fan of Nintendo for the games they have put out over the years, but they treat creators like garbage. And this affects creators small and large. Video Game Donkey just put out a video gushing over how good Super Mario Odyssey is. That was demonetized. Or rather, Nintendo claimed the video, so there was money being made, but it all went to Nintendo. And since 2015, Nintendo has given creators an option. You can join their creator program. And essentially what that does is it allows you to monetize those videos where you feature Nintendo content, but Nintendo gets a percentage of your AdSense. There are also some issues around live that we don't have enough time to get into. So because of what I see as a very anti-creator stance, my opinion in general, as far as on YouTube, is Nintendo can go fuck themselves. The way you reward all those creators giving Nintendo free promotion is to take away the money they were going to make from that promotion. Cool. And of course, like I said, the other bit of news around this was around the iPhone X. The iPhone X was just released. A ton of people releasing videos of unboxings, first hands-on. Tons of those videos were demonetized. I mean, we're talking videos that got millions upon millions of views. MKBHD, demonetized. Sam Sheffer, demonetized. Audrustine, demonetized. Casey Neistat, you get the point what I'm doing here. Lots of people affected. Now, of course, you get people outraged. Most people, it's just tired frustration with YouTube at this point. YouTube saying the algorithm is evolving, it's learning. Recently, YouTube announced and put through a change that resulted in a lot of videos that were demonetized being remonetized, although some videos that had previously been fine and were monetized were demonetized. But still, with these massive creators just putting out videos on the iPhone X, nothing risque about them. Why are these most likely completely family-friendly, advertiser-friendly videos being demonetized by an algorithm that has had months to learn? And so from this frustration came a suggestion that went viral. Casey Neistat tweeting a suggestion for YouTube. When the algorithm flags a video for bigger creators, those with more than 10,000 subs, 100,000 subs, why not have the video immediately reviewed by a human before demonetizing? YouTube should assume the burden on inaccuracies of their algorithm, not pass it on to their creators. For many big creators, their AdSense is their livelihood. It's how they pay their bills. Now to this, YouTube responded, we're always open to feedback and wish we could, but with 400 hours uploaded every minute, it's not humanly possible. We're always working on improving our system. Our last update made millions of videos monetizable. We know we have a long way to go, but in the meantime, we recommend uploading as unlisted to check your status and appeal if necessary. And my personal response to that is, YouTube, I love you, but that response is a little bit bullshit. You didn't respond to Casey's suggestion. You said that 400 hours of video are uploaded every minute, but that's not the case if you're just considering creators over 100,000 subscribers. And most likely, Casey Neistat's giving you that 100,000 subscriber runway so that it's less work on you. I mean, while there are more and more popular YouTube accounts every single day, 100,000 subscribers, or let's say a regular of 100,000 views per video is a pretty big runway. It allows you to focus, and honestly, it becomes a math problem. If MKBHD is being demonetized on a video that now has 6.7 million views, because you automatically demonetized his video, not only how much money did he miss out on, but you as a company, Google, YouTube, how much money did you miss out on? When you take into consideration that we're just talking about one human reviewer on one video for 10 minutes, it makes you think of, in general, on YouTube as a whole, how much money both creator and YouTube are missing out on because they're not throwing a body at the problem. And here's the thing, I understand to a certain degree why you'd want to demonetize rather than risk. It's a far less damaging story for YouTube if its creators complain about demonetization rather than Nike ad runs next to ISIS kill video, right? YouTube's trying to prevent Adpocalypse 2.0, or if you're still affected, an escalation. But you would think that your verified creators would have a different extra level of trust. Like Marquez, MKBHD, he has years of not posting anything horrible. So when out of nowhere your algorithm goes, hey, this guy who has a pretty much perfect record, 4 years, and he puts out a video called Apple iPhone X Unboxing, because he's made us hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, let's give him 10 minutes of our time so that we don't screw him over. Or that's an insane idea and I can go fuck myself, but it really seems like it shouldn't be the latter of the two. And I guess if there is an end to that story, YouTube, I love you. Please be better. And the last thing we're going to talk about today is that horrifying Texas church shooting. 26 people were killed, 20 others were injured. It is the deadliest shooting in Texas history. So let's go through this story. Reportedly, the gunman was first spotted at a gas station across the street from First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs at 11:20 a.m. The shooter drove across the street, got out of his car. He was reportedly wearing all black, a mask, a ballistic vest, and was armed with a Ruger AR-556 rifle. The gunman then began firing from the outside of the church and moved to the right side of the building where he continued to shoot. He then entered from the back of the church, firing all the way to the front and then firing on his way back out. When the gunman emerged from the church, an armed neighbor exchanged gunfire with him. The shooter then dropped his rifle, got into his car, and fled the scene. And while this was happening, a guy by the name of Johnny Langendorf said he was driving to his girlfriend's house when he witnessed all of this.
I had parked at the intersection where I had seen the shooter come out from the church, and a gentleman, the neighbor of the church, had come out yielding a rifle, and the two men started exchanging gunfire. From there, the shooter jumped in his vehicle where he had the door open and the engine running, ready to go, and fled the scene. At that time, the neighbor with the rifle came to my truck, and he opened my door and said he just shot up the church and got in.
So then the neighbor who exchanged gunfire with the shooter jumps into Johnny's car. The two then pursue the shooter on a high-speed chase while calling dispatch to send police in his direction. While this was happening, reportedly the shooter called his father to let him know that he didn't think he was going to make it. And then during the chase, the shooter lost control of his vehicle and went off into a ditch. Law enforcement later found the suspect dead in his vehicle. Officials saying the gunman suffered gunshot wounds from the civilian and then shot himself as well. Inside the vehicle, they also recovered 2 other weapons, a 9mm Glock handgun and a Ruger 22 handgun. Shortly after this news broke, President Trump tweeted, "May God be with the people of Sutherland Springs, Texas. The FBI and law enforcement are on the scene. I am monitoring the situation from Japan." And later, in a press conference, he added,
"This act of evil occurred as the victims and their families were in their place of sacred worship. We cannot put into words the pain and grief we all feel, but in dark times, and these are dark times, such as these, Americans do what they do best. We pull together. We join hands, we lock arms, and through the tears and through the sadness, we stand strong."
Now, as far as those killed in this horrible attack, some of the names have been released as a recording, but many haven't. What we do know is the youngest victim was 18 months old and the oldest was 77 years old. Among the dead, there were several children, a pregnant woman, and the pastor's 14-year-old daughter. And of the 20 injured at this time, 10 are still critical, 6 are stable, and 4 others are in serious condition. And of course, in the aftermath of this horrific attack, you have people saying, how could this happen? Why did this happen? This is a senseless mass murder in a town of about 600 people. An attack that essentially left 4% of their population dead. Well, here's what we know so far. We know the shooter served in the Air Force from 2010 until 2014 and worked in the Logistics Readiness Department. We know that he was court-martialed in 2010 on charges of assault on his spouse and on their child. According to Don Christensen, a retired colonel who is the chief prosecutor for the Air Force, quote, "He assaulted his stepson severely enough that he fractured his skull, and he also assaulted his wife. He pled to intentionally doing it." We know he received a bad conduct discharge, confinement for 12 months, and reduction of his military status. There's also been a lot of talk as to whether this is a guns issue or a mental health issue. This morning, President Trump saying,
"Mental health is your problem here. This was a very, based on preliminary reports, very deranged individual. A lot of problems over a long period of time. We have a lot of mental health problems in our country, as do other countries. But this isn't a guns situation. I mean, we could go into it, but it's a little bit soon to go into it. But fortunately, somebody else had a gun that was shooting in the opposite direction. Otherwise, it would have been as bad as it was. It would have been much worse. But this is a mental health problem at the highest level.
That said, you still had people arguing that this was a guns issue. And the reason for that is many people were pointing to his bad conduct discharge. Federal law prohibits those who have been dishonorably discharged from buying a firearm. But the thing to note here is the law does not prohibit those who have received a bad conduct discharge from buying a firearm. Still, Texas law prohibits those with domestic violence convictions from owning firearms. But it's not exactly clear right now if the shooter's bad conduct discharge for the assaults on his then wife and their child fall under that provision. I mean, even the governor of Texas was questioning how the gunman got access to these weapons, saying that at one point the shooter even tried to get a license to conceal carry a gun in Texas, but was denied by the state.
So how was it that he was able to get a gun? By all the facts that we seem to know, he was not supposed to have access to a gun. So how did this happen?
Additionally, there were reports coming out that a member of law enforcement said that the suspect had actually bought his rifle from a sporting goods store in San Antonio. This back in April of 2016, where they said he checked the box on his background check paperwork to indicate he didn't have any disqualifying criminal history. But right now, the authorities are still looking into the situation, so hopefully we have answers soon. And as far as motive, while there has been just everything you could possibly imagine thrown on social media, officially, according to Freeman Martin of the Department of Public Safety, the Texas shooting wasn't about race or religion. In one of the most recent updates, they said there was a domestic situation unfolding folding in the gunman's family. There are reports coming out saying the suspect's in-laws went to that church. One of the most recent reports saying the shooter's grandmother-in-law was one of the victims. And Martin added this.
Everybody wants to know is why did this happen? It's a senseless crime, but we can tell you that there was a domestic situation going on within this family. The suspect's mother-in-law attended this church. We know that he had made threatening text from him. We want to get that out there that this was not racially motivated.
So that new information may help us understand why the shooter chose this specific church. And that's where we are on this right now. There are also a lot of side stories to this. Like we've seen in past attacks, there was a ton of fake news out there. And it wasn't just stuff that was popping up on Google's top search results or just stuff on Twitter. Congressman Vicente Gonzalez on CNN said this.
It was reported to me that he's actually not from this community. Apparently, his name was released as Sam Hyde. That was the name I was given.
But if you've watched the show over the past few years or you've paid attention to the internet, you know that that is just a troll. Whenever there's a mass killing, there are a bunch of people that try to say that Sam Hyde did it just to troll and mislead people. There are also fake Facebook screenshots that went viral. People were trying to say that he was a member of Antifa. Aside from that, there was also a massive debate once again around thoughts and prayers. At the center of this, we saw Paul Ryan and Will Wheaton. Paul Ryan tweeting, "Reports out of Texas are devastating. People of Sutherland Springs need our prayers right now." To which Will Wheaton tweeted and responded, "The murder victims were in a church. If prayers did anything, they'd still be alive, you worthless sack of shit." Now, as you would expect, there were a lot of people offended by this. Many feeling like he was just lashing out at religious people. Will Wheaton then later apologized, writing, "Hey, real and actual people of faith, I hear you. I apologize for insulting you in my rage at Paul Ryan's refusal to address gun violence. Your faith is your business, and people like Paul Ryan exploit it while they hide behind words without deeds, and people continue to die." But that's where we're on this situation. As new information comes out, I will try to keep you up to date. And ultimately where I land on this issue is I personally think it's a little odd to just label it a mental health issue and not a gun issue at all. There's not much further I can go into that debate without the investigation finding out how the hell he actually got those weapons. Also on the note of it's too soon to talk about policy, I understand if you have that opinion, but I don't think that you can say it here, but then have the complete opposite opinion when someone says they did something for ISIS and then say, okay, well, we're going to completely change immigration. I don't even have the energy or desire to argue around that point right now. I'm just sad. It hurts. It's soul crushing. The fact that when you look online and you see this story or you hear these words coming out of my mouth and you're not surprised anymore, that makes it all the more heartbreaking. And I understand where people can get frustrated with the sending thoughts and prayers. I feel like we've just seen this all before. And I really just don't know how to end the story. It's put me in a messed up headspace. I feel like we're all repeating the same thing over and over again. Everyone yells at each other. People have to bury members of their family, in this case, some as young as 18 months old, and then the news cycle in the world rinses and repeats. I don't know. I wish I could leave you with a more positive note, but I guess sometimes the world really just doesn't allow for that. That said, of course, this is the Philip DeFranco Show. Aside from the story, my opinion, I want to hear from you. What are your thoughts on this last story, the first one, anything in between? Let me know in those comments down below. With that said, let's cut to the outro that I shot previously where I was in a better mood. And remember, if you liked this video, you like what I'm trying to do on this channel,
Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now we definitely don't feature enough AMD hardware here on the channel, which isn't a bias thing, it's just because I know more about Intel stuff. The launch of new AMD hardware always excites me, and so does checking out their older creations. One such CPU that fascinates me every time I think about it is the FX 9590. You see, back in 2013, before its launch, it was the subject of many articles focused on what was to be the world's first commercially available 5GHz processor. With 8 cores and an OEM launch price of $900 or £700, it was certainly priced up to match that of its competitors' high-end offerings, though that price did drop to $300 for retail release. Aside from the price, they were hard to get, needed extreme cooling solutions, and would only work in a handful of 990FX motherboards because of the 220-watt TDP. These days though, that's all changed, and the AM3 Plus platform is pretty cheap to buy into because it is considered somewhat obsolete. Though in my opinion, FX processors are still alright if you can find one cheap enough. Back to the FX 9590, and the words "sort of" in the title of this video are referring to the fact that 5GHz is the turbo boost speed. The base clock speed is 4.7. The FX 9000 series were also essentially just FX 8000 series chips that had been overclocked, which makes it sound very gimmicky, but they certainly made an impression on the world of computing, though whether it was a good or bad one is down to personal opinion. The FX 9590 is certainly cool to me because of what it is and how it was marketed, as opposed to how it actually performs. Speaking of which, at the time, you could have expected this chip to trade blows with Intel's i5-2500K, with modern-day i3s and Ryzen 3 CPUs being similar in performance. If we quickly take a look at some CPU-based benchmark results, the 9590 scores 109 and 710 in the single and multi-threaded tests respectively of Cinebench R15, which is actually a pretty decent result. So for editing and rendering work, it will still be a great option, but I definitely just can't recommend it. While we're on the subject of rendering, you could expect a 30-second video clip at 1080p 60fps to render in 24 seconds with Premiere Pro. Pretty quick, but again, nothing that a cheaper, cooler and overclocked FX 8350 couldn't achieve. Let's move on to some games. With the newest COD, the game was set to high and the resolution was 1080p, which both the 9590 and 1060 are capable of. Keep an eye on the CPU usage here throughout to gauge a rough idea of bottlenecking. The game ran well with 83 frames per second on average and a 1% low of 53, but with a 0.1% low of 10 FPS, that indicates some stutter throughout, which I did notice, but I don't think it was anything that would significantly distract you from gameplay. It might cause a little bit of an issue in multiplayer though. It was a similar story in Witcher 3, and with an average of 68, 1% low figure of 39 and a 0.1% figure of 11 frames per second. To me, the game felt more than playable with the high settings and medium post-processing preset, but the area around Novigrad can be a particularly taxing one on a lot of hardware, and although it's not one of the newest games out there, it did release after the CPU itself. Evil Within 2 was actually a more balanced experience, though it doesn't run very well on a few different components that I've tested if I'm honest. High settings were playable, but there were a few frame drops with an average frame rate of 41. This was followed by a 1% low of 34 and a 0.1% low of 16. Actually playing the game felt smooth enough though. If I'm totally honest, it isn't really worth testing many more games because I don't think this is something you should consider buying in 2017 unless you want it because of its status as a 5GHz CPU. Sort of. It's definitely still capable, but you should just get the FX 8350 if you want an older AMD processor on a budget, or a Ryzen 3 1200 if you have a little more to spend. Either way, the 9590 still sounds pretty cool on paper, even if it never really offered anything spectacular in terms of performance. It's unpredictable in stability, and a huge power hog too, but if you're feeling like something different at the centre of a PC build and don't mind the heat, have at it. Guys, thank you so much for watching the video. As always, if you enjoyed it, please leave a like. Leave a dislike if you didn't enjoy it. Let me know what you think of this processor as well as if you own it, of course. And hopefully I'll see you all in the next one. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now it seems to me that
Hey y'all, Scott here. Food, shelter, love, air, happiness. None of these play Mario Party 6, so I lost interest at Hey y'all, Scott here. The GameCube was one of Nintendo's worst-selling home consoles, which is a fact I'm trying to get redacted from Wikipedia, because in my opinion, the GameCube deserves so much more, and dare I say it, was Nintendo's best home console.
Look at this sucker. The GameCube definitely looked different from its competitors. The controller even decided to go for a funk-riddled design. These buttons just look like they're up to something. I think the GameCube's design is really indicative of what Nintendo was trying to go for this generation. A pretty standard game console with a Nintendo twist. Like, a lot of the GameCube is pretty standard when you get down to it, but little bits in here remind us that it's Nintendo. The GameCube's biggest drawback was the mini DVD-like proprietary disc. These simply couldn't hold as much information as the Xbox or PS2, and thus, third-party games were lacking in comparison. The controller may seem odd to outsiders, but don't be fooled, this is an excellent controller. For 3D games, it's fantastic. But for 2D games, however, it falls a little flat. The D-pad here is not too hot, and if you're trying to play SNES games on the Wii Virtual Console, running and jumping in Super Mario World is impossible due to the placement of Y and B. The SNES was all about perfecting the types of games we saw on the NES, taking what worked and multiplying it exponentially. If the NES was the golden age of 2D games, the SNES was perfecting the golden age. The GameCube is basically the same thing, but for 3D games. The Nintendo 64 introduced the world to Nintendo franchises in 3D, but of course, being the first romp in a 3D space for Nintendo, most games came with a complimentary side of jank. The GameCube perfected the 3D Nintendo game. What the SNES did after the NES, the GameCube did after the N64. The GameCube is remembered by me as the console that housed the most main Nintendo franchises, as future consoles infamously skip some franchises, such as Metroid on the Wii U and Star Fox on the Wii. The GameCube had Mario, Zelda, Metroid, Star Fox, F-Zero, Mario Kart, Smash Bros., Fire Emblem, Pokemon, and introduced the world to Pikmin, Chibi Robo, Custom Robo, and Animal Crossing in the West. I think the most blatant omission of the GameCube's first-party library was a traditional Kirby game, but we did get Kirby Air Ride, and multiple Kirby games were planned but ultimately scrapped for the GameCube, with one being reworked into Kirby's Return to Dreamland years later on the Wii. That library though, it makes me squeal yikes in the best possible way. So many great franchises that appeared on the console. They were like older games, but with a twist. Mario Sunshine is like Mario 64, but with FLUDD, the water pack, allowing for all kinds of different platforming possibilities. Metroid Prime was like the old Metroid games, but in first person. Wind Waker was like the past 3D Zelda games, but now with a cartoony cel-shaded style. This mentality even oozed into the launch of the system, where the GameCube, like all Nintendo consoles before it, launched with a game from the Mario series, but not a Mario game. It was a Luigi game set in a haunted mansion. The GameCube took beloved franchises and put a fun, unique spin on them, making them feel different and new, but not taking away from what made them great to begin with. That's what I love about the GameCube. Not only does it have an insane library of great Nintendo games, but they are all unique entries in their respected franchises. So all the games released on the GameCube have their own feel. When you look at the games released on the Wii U, so many are just sequels to Wii or 3DS games. They don't really feel like they're doing their own thing. The GameCube has its own feel to games, and I love that about it. And of course, the quality of the games on the system were of the utmost variety. So many of the games released on this thing were considered the cream of the crop in their series. Super Smash Bros. Melee is still played by millions and is one of the most popular esports out there. Wind Waker is often considered overlooked, but I consider it to be an incredibly popular pick for the favorite Zelda game. It was obviously shunned before and a little bit after release, but nowadays, I see so many people refer to it as their favorite, and while I've only played about 5 hours of it, I loved what I played. Paper Mario: The Thousand-Year Door has a solid hour of appreciation from fans every day, especially after the recent Paper Mario games. Many consider it to be the best of the best. F-Zero GX is, in my opinion, the pinnacle of the series. The fact that the franchise basically died here, other than a few GBA games released afterwards, I'm almost okay with, because this is the magnum opus of the F-Zero series. Fast, fun, and wicked difficult, GX is the ultimate F-Zero game. Pikmin 1 and 2, oh my god, the Pikmin franchise is one of the most underappreciated Nintendo franchises. Sadly, I have yet to play Pikmin 2, but Pikmin 1 and 3 on the Wii U are the epitome of sublime. The GameCube games are fantastic, and the Wii versions are excellent as well, adding the pointer functionality of the Wii Remote making throwing Pikmin a bit quicker and more precise, but the GameCube games get points for being the originals. The Mario Sports games were firing at all cylinders during the GameCube era. All major Mario Sports series got entries on the system, and they were some of the best out there. But Mario Sunshine, oh boy, what a game! I really want an HD remake of this game a la Wind Waker HD sooner than later. It's far from perfect and could use some tightening up here and there, but Mario Sunshine is wonderful regardless. And Mario Kart Double Dash, easily the coolest, most unique Mario Kart to date. Having 2 characters per kart allows for so many gameplay possibilities, like co-op and special items. It had a great battle mode and even offered land play. I don't know if I like Double Dash or Mario Kart 8 Deluxe more, but Double Dash is easily a monumental installment in the series. Nintendo also dabbled in the M-rated game space with the cult classic Eternal Darkness and Geist. Third-party support on the GameCube, I'd argue, was okay. Definitely not the greatest out there, but better than other Nintendo systems, definitely. Nintendo actually collaborated with a few third parties, allowing them to use their characters to beef up the lineup. Of course, that included Soul Calibur 2 featuring Link, NBA Street V3 and SSX on Tour featuring Mario, Peach, and Luigi, and Dance Dance Revolution Mario Mix. This game used to be rather expensive due to being discontinued quickly after release for some reason, but due to not many giving a darn and a half about DDR anymore, it's pretty easily obtainable nowadays, and I'd recommend it. It's an odd bugger of a game, but a really cool one. This beautiful tumor of an add-on is the Game Boy player, and is one of the biggest reasons to own an original GameCube console, just because you can play all GameCube games on most Wii models, but only the GameCube can use the Game Boy player. This wasn't the first time Nintendo allowed fans to play Game Boy games on their TV, however, they released a conceptually similar product for the SNES, the Super Game Boy, and a later revised Super Game Boy 2, released only in Japan, adding link cable functionality. I think the Super Game Boy is cooler personality-wise, as you can do a ton of fun stuff with the borders, but the Game Boy player will always reign supreme, as it plays nearly all Game Boy games. While other Nintendo systems ooze sheer greatness, I think the GameCube has a certain charm that cannot be overlooked. It's the best Nintendo system in my opinion, with the most great Nintendo games.
The GameCube is my favorite Nintendo console, and I hope it maintains its amazing legacy. Of course, it got absolutely pounded by the PS2 and less so the original Xbox, but I think it was better than those systems retrospectively. Those systems are still great, but I see less people looking back as fondly on those systems as the GameCube. The GameCube's like Van Gogh. It really started to get recognition after its death, and the PS2 and original Xbox are more so like Pogs. Popular at the time, not as loved these days.
Congratulations! That was the first use of that analogy ever!
never saw you coming, you never saw me. I can't explain who I am, 'cause there's no excuses. This is who I'm meant to be. There's no regrets. I don't care if you believe. There's no excuses. This is who I choose to be. I don't look for trouble. Trouble looks for me. trouble looks for me. That's how it's always been, that's how it's gonna be. I'm looking down on you, you're looking up to me. I never saw you coming, you never saw me. I can't explain who I am, 'cause there's no excuses. This is who I'm meant to be. There's no regrets. I don't care if you believe. There's no excuses. This is who I choose to be. I don't look for trouble. Trouble looks for me. Doesn't confuse you. I fucking used you. I got just what I want and what I wanna do. You won't destroy me. You just annoy me. I'm sitting here on top, so like a trophy. I can't explain how I am, 'cause there's no excuses. This is who I'm meant to be. There's no regrets. I don't care if you believe. There's no excuses. This is who I choose to be. I don't look for trouble. Trouble looks for me. Get some. Boost. Cause there's no excuses. This is who I'm meant to be. There's no regrets. I don't care if you believe. There's no excuses. This is who I choose to be. I don't look for trouble. Trouble looks for me. Trouble looks for me. I don't look for trouble, trouble looks for me. That's how it's always been, that's how it's gonna be. I'm looking down on you, you're looking up to me. I never saw you coming, you never saw me. I can't explain who I am, 'cause there's no excuses. This is who I'm meant to be. There's no regrets. I don't care if you believe. There's no excuses. This is who I choose to be. I don't look for trouble. Trouble looks for me. Doesn't confuse you. I fucking used you. I got just what I want and what I wanna do. You won't destroy me. You just annoy me. I'm sitting here on top, so like a trophy. I can't explain how I am, 'cause there's no excuses. This is who I'm meant to be. There's no regrets. I don't care if you believe. There's no excuses. This is who I choose to be. I don't look for trouble. Trouble looks for me. Get some.
Hey y'all, Scott here, Death. It's pretty neat, right? Well, that's what the Wii U is up to these days, and during the era of Wii U, I had an alright time. There was a decent handful of great experiences on the platform. However, it obviously had a lot of problems, and I made a video about 6 of them, which you can do here, here, and even here. But we can't be so negative all the time, so here are 5 things the Wii U did right. The Wii U gave us Splatoon and Super Mario Maker. In my opinion, those 2 games alone proved the worth of the Wii U doing the whole existence thing right there. It's just a shame because if those 2 games came out around launch period, then I think the Wii U would have sold much better. Definitely not Wii numbers, but closer to GameCube and Nintendo 64. Splatoon was Nintendo's first big new character-driven IP since Pikmin, and the fact that it did so well should make everybody happy. It showed Nintendo that their fans are willing to buy more than Mario and Zelda if Nintendo feels confident in them. And Nintendo definitely knew they had something special with Splatoon. Mario Maker is still a Mario game, but it's starting what I believe to be a big sub-series for Nintendo. The online communities for these games are massive and show just how big of a success they really were. The coolest feature touted by the Wii U, other than that TV remote on the gamepad, was asymmetrical multiplayer. So many great ideas were implemented into multiplayer attractions in Nintendo Land, and while it didn't do anything to prove to people why the gamepad was crucial to gaming, it was still super fun and it was something only the Wii U could do locally straight out of the box. Sure, it didn't have much of a wow factor to it, but asymmetrical multiplayer offered a lot of fun options for multiplayer on the Wii U. The Wii U was Nintendo's first HD console, and you know, some of the games looked pretty good. Of course, not all of the games looked that hot, and Nintendo officially blamed the foray into HD development as the reason behind the long software drive during the first year of Wii U, but the games that looked good looked wicked good. Mario Kart 8, Pikmin 3, Paper Mario Color Splash, Smash Brothers. These games all looked gorgeous, and they definitely helped the Wii U look better than it usually did in comparison to the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. Nintendo Directs were Nintendo's primary method of relaying information to their fans throughout the Wii U generation. Now, many people could argue that Nintendo Directs aren't good, as they were only prominent through the Wii U generation, the same generation Nintendo had record losses in, but I think for the fans, they were great. They were basically mini E3s every 2 months or so with Nintendo charm, spunk, and residue. And the build-up before one, man, that was awesome! Nintendo Directs are just a lot of fun, and none of them are home runs by any means, but I still think they're proficient ways to relay information to fans about upcoming projects, and with a global company like Nintendo, pre-recorded video streams are the way to go. If you watch my video on why the Wii U failed, which you can catch here, and down there, you'll know that one of my biggest talking points was the fact that the 3DS and Wii U software libraries were vastly the same. But even my arrogance for being right can't stop me from telling you guys that there was a ton of games on the Wii U that I just had a fun romp and a half with. And these games include Pikmin 3, the nerve of this game being so neat. Pikmin 3 is marvelous. It's beautiful and plays like a dream. Super Smash Brothers for Wii U. Best Smash game, approach me with Edge, I dare you. Mario Kart 8, one of the best Mario Karts, right up there with Double Dash. Splatoon, an amazing accomplishment for a new IP. Oh man, how can I hold all these games with just 2 hands? I also like these games, I guess. So yes, after countless videos of me dogging on the Wii U, I finally admitted that it did something right. It had some wonderful games on it, and that can't be ignored. However, even the most pathetic of Nintendo fans, myself included, have to admit that when you look back at the console, it really wasn't that great. I was way into the Wii U during its lifespan, but as I look back at it, I can clearly see why it was a flop. But hey, at least the Wii U's legacy will live on within the Switch, as the HDMI cables manufactured for the Wii U are still being used with the Switch. Yeah, they're just HDMI cables, but that's almost as resourceful as me! For example, I repurposed all my old jeans as washcloths.
In early 2017, there was an internet outcry over the Academy Awards' decision to not nominate Makoto Shinkai's Your Name for Best Animated Feature. This came as a shock, as Shinkai's film not only made more money worldwide than any other anime film before, but was also chosen as the Best Animated Feature of 2016 by the LA Film Critics Association. So, why wasn't it nominated? Well, first, there's a few things to understand about the Oscars. Almost none of the voters are critics. In order to be in the Academy, one has to have been nominated for one. Many of these people are filmmakers from the golden Hollywood era of the 50s, 60s, or 70s, and they have a very specific view on animation. They came from the time of Disney cartoons, where animation was always animated in full 24 frames per second. Modern-day Japanese animation relatively is animated a lot slower, generally at 8 to 12 frames per second. So most critics from that era don't see Japanese anime as true animation. As a matter of fact, the Academy is very open about their favoritism with Disney. Let's have a look. Out of the current 16 winners of the award, 12 of them were distributed by Disney, accounting for 75% of wins. Out of the 67 films that have been nominated, only 5 were from Japan, or 7%. But all of these films were distributed in America by Disney, which brings us to the next point. The Academy likes to go with distribution companies that have a reputable record. Generally, at least one foreign animation film gets nominated each year, but they're normally either distributed by Sony Pictures Classics or GKIDS, two studios seen as art house distributors. Anime distributors such as Funimation and Aniplex don't carry this sophisticated image. Instead, they present themselves as geek culture, appealing to most anime fans who are teenagers, which holds no respect with the Academy. Rather, most Academy voters, if not all, probably have never heard of Funimation or Aniplex, meaning they would tend to ignore any of the films that have been shortlisted for a nomination by those companies. Which leads to the final reason. The Academy just didn't hear about Your Name. Look, most of the voters aren't on the internet due to their age, and don't follow much film news in general anymore. Funimation also made a mistake of being too hasty, because in order for a film to be nominated for an Oscar, it has to have premiered in Los Angeles County the year prior. Funimation didn't get the rights to Your Name until late 2016, and pushed the quick LA premiere in December with only 2 showings. The film wouldn't have its main release until 4 months later, 2 months after the 2017 Oscars. Frankly, there wasn't enough time for the Academy to even become aware of the film or see it. If Funimation had waited for an early 2017 release, maybe enough traction might have gave way for a 2018 Oscar nod. But we'll never know, since the Academy is pretty much set in their ways. But things are trying to change. Just last year, Isao Takahata, director of The Tale of the Princess Kaguya, was invited to join the Academy. Though he declined, the Academy is seeking new and more international voters. It's just, most of the film world doesn't actually care about the Oscars anymore. Though, if we're looking for an anime film to be nominated for an Oscar, we should really pay attention to In This Corner of the World. It's a film that follows the events of World War II, it beat Your Name in the Japanese Academy Awards, won the Annecy Film Festival in France, and it was directed by someone who has worked with Ghibli before, all of which seems to be in the Academy's alley. So here's hoping. But if you're looking to see the Love Live School Idol movie in next year's lineup, I wouldn't hold my breath.
Well, movies sure are inventive. Get from that. Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we'll be counting down our picks for the top 10 most disturbing Saw deaths. Before we begin, we publish new videos every day, so be sure to subscribe for more great content. For this list, we'll be looking at what we consider to be the most disgusting and disturbing